Haus der Sehnsucht süßer Sprache.
I stole the wine, didn't you, runt?
No, I didn't.
Let me see what I can do to...
I didn't do it, I swear.
Come in.
Reporting for work, sir.
Relax, son. This isn't the academy.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Sullivan will do just fine. I think you'll find that the COI is a bit more informal than your other branches of government. Now, let's set you to work. Some city detectives sent this complaint over to us. It should be pretty straightforward. If you have any questions about the assignment, don't hesitate to ask. The door's always open, son.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sullivan.
What is it, Mr. Pearson? Oh, yes, of course, your office. It's across the hall, and, please forgive the mess. Your predecessor departed rather unexpectedly, and we're still short-staffed and haven't had a chance to clear it out for you. Well, I hope you can handle things on your own. It's something you're going to have to get used to with the COI.
President Roosevelt had just authorized the formation of the COI that summer. They were supposed to be the outfit that handled the real spy stuff overseas. It was the place to be if you wanted real adventure. At least, that was the bill of goods the recruiters for the COI sold me. And here I was, stuck in a crummy old office, in Cleveland of all places, as far away from any real action as I could imagine. What's this? This might come in handy. I wonder what sort of artifacts Mr. Pensky wanted Professor Strauss to look at. Bunch of gibberish.
Yes?
Sorry to bother you, sir.
Not at all, Mr. Pearson. Come right in.
I have a question about this case file, sir.
Certainly. What is it?
Sir, this munitions owner, Mr. Finster, is there anything you can tell me about him that wasn't in the report?
Hank Finster is an interesting case. He's an important man with the fellows in the Defense Department on account of the munitions factories he owns. But he's not wound all too tight, if you catch my meaning. It's always one thing after another with him. If it isn't the unions, it's the Reds. If it isn't the Reds, it's the Nazis. But he may have something there. Take a look at that invitation. What do you make of it?
Well, the invitation's a little unusual, but it looks like fascist propaganda to me.
And that it is some. Now, I'm not saying it's Nazi propaganda. There are 100 different organizations with fascist agendas, but this call to brotherhood could have come straight out of Hitler's Germany. Did you notice the quality of the invitation itself? It's not a pamphlet or a flyer. Whoever these people are, they have a certain amount of sophistication. And they seem to be targeting only people of wealth and influence in our society. We need to be careful not to ruffle any feathers.
Yes, sir. Who handled this case when it first came in, sir?
A city detective named Marillo. I guess he's got his hands full now. He's handling the torso murders investigation. Terrible work, that. They found another one just yesterday.
Sir, what happened to the fellow I'm replacing?
Walter Pensky. Good man. And a good agent. Once. The job got the better of him.
I imagine he must have been under a lot of pressure, sir.
We all are these days. Just remember, Mr. Pearson, we follow orders, not personal crusades.
I will, sir.
Excuse me, could you tell me where Mr. Finster's office is?
He's up there. You're welcome.
Excuse me, Mr. Finster? Jim Pearson from the COI. Been assigned to investigate your complaint.
Ah, what the hell took you so long? I guess all my calls to Mayor Lausch finally got you guys off your cans.
What do you remember about the man that gave you that invitation, Mr. Finster?
He's a no-good bum, I remember that.
Do you remember his name?
I employed a Nazi sympathizer right here in my own factory.
He was an employee of yours?
Of course not. I don't hire Nazis.
I'm sorry. I'm a little confused. Who's the Nazi?
Why did they send the boy to do a man's job? What are they trying to do? Drive me crazy?
Wait just a minute, Mr. Finster. That's not called for.
My foreman, George Hansen. I used to think he was a good man. Well, he drinks a little bit too much, but he's a hard worker. Well, anyway, how am I supposed to know he traffics with Nazis? Well, he brings this riffraff right through my doors, into my factory, right into my office. He could have killed me. He was standing as close to me as you are right now. Well, naturally, I fired him on the spot.
Riffraff.
No, you idiot. George Hansen. Haven't you been listening to a word I said?
Do you remember the name of the man that gave you that invitation?
Of course not. He never mentioned it. He said he was just a messenger.
Can you describe this messenger for me?
I only described him to that detective. Look, I even picked his photograph out of one of their books. Oh, but he didn't care. All he was interested in was that vagrant killer. Well, if you ask me, he's doing this city a big favor.
I wouldn't know anything about that, sir. Can you describe him again for me, please, for my benefit?
You know, if you guys had done your work in the first place, you'd already know this. Yeah. He looked like a killer. Real mean, squinty eyes, red hair, and the bushiest red beard you'd ever want to see. Hey, there's no mistaking this guy.
Do you have any idea where I might be able to find this messenger?
Of course not.
Okay, what about this other fellow, the foreman?
Well, I used to live in company housing, but I had him evicted, of course.
Do you have any idea where I might be able to find him?
A man of my standing doesn't fraternize with his workers. Although, I have been told that George likes to throw his money around a lot on payday. The men, they like this cheap whiskey saloon in the Roaring Third. McGillies, McGarrity's, some kind of Mick name. McGinty's, that's the name of it, McGinty's.
What can you tell me about this brotherhood, Mr. Finster?
Can I tell you? Oh, what makes you think I can tell you anything? I'll tell you what it is, though. It's a Nazi conspiracy is what it is.
Now, what makes you say that, Mr. Finster? The invitation has no swastikas, no insignia, no clear-cut signs of Nazi involvement.
You mark my words, young man. This is a Nazi conspiracy, or my name isn't Henry W. Finster.
I'm gonna need some hard facts before I'm able to make that stick with my superior, sir.
Where do they find you guys? What do they just pull you out of a pumpkin patch? It's right before your eyes. Those screwy symbols.
You recognize the symbols on that invitation?
I've seen them all over Germany.
When were you in Germany, Mr. Finster?
Don't you give me that look.
Mr. Finster,
There is nothing wrong with Germany. My grandparents were born in Deutschland. We still have family there. The German people are upstanding, hard-working, God-fearing folk. And the American worker can learn a thing or two from them. The only thing wrong with Germany is that Austrian peasant and his gang of street thugs.
My apologies, Mr. Finster. I am only trying to establish the facts in the case.
Okay. It's been 15, 20 years now since I've been there. But I will never forget those symbols.
Do you have any idea what those symbols mean?
Of course not. I would never have anything to do with that sort of thing.
Come in.
Excuse me, Detective Marilow? I'm Jim Pearson. I'm from the COI. I'm here about Mr. Finster's complaint.
A what? This had better be good, kid. I'm up to my neck in murders.
You were the detective that handled Mr. Finster's complaint?
Finster? Oh yeah, Finster. I remember him now. Listen, kid. If I had a nickel for every so-called Nazi spy in this city, I would be a very rich man.
So you don't think his complaint was legitimate?
Ever since you secret agent types start stirring people up about Nazi spies, every Tom, Dick, and Harry with a beef about his neighbors has been into my office. You care to take a guess how many of them panned out?
Well, what did your investigation reveal? Was there anything to the invitation? You did investigate this, didn't you?
Now listen, Sonny! There's a butcher on the loose in my city. I didn't have time. Hey, isn't that sort of thing your job now? I don't have time to babysit another Fed.
Detective, I understand you must be very busy right now.
You don't understand nothing. Every day, it seems, we find another body or a part of a body. We don't have enough good leads and we don't have enough men to cover this case. And on top of that, I got some horse's ass from the Federal Bureau of Investigation looking over my shoulder trying to tell me how to do my job.
I'm sorry to have bothered you, Detective. I'll be on my way.
This case is gonna be the death of me yet. For what it's worth, kid, Finster had a look at the mugshot books. He said he spotted the Joe what handed him that screwy invitation. I think he even marked the books and everything. You can have a look through them if you think it'll help.
Thank you, Detective. Are you any closer to catch a torso killer?
That sick son of a bitch has been too clever.
How's that?
Well, for starters, he's not leaving enough behind for us to identify. Our best guess is he's cutting up bums and whores, people nobody'd miss. Takes them apart real clean, too, like a doctor. 2 whacks and he's through them. The queerest thing is, he bleeds them dry, washes them clean, and wraps them up like a butcher, all nice and neat in newspapers. It's like nothing I've ever seen, and I've seen plenty.
I'm sure it's only a matter of time before something breaks through.
Oh, you got that right. His kind always slips up. And when he does, bang! I'm gonna be right there on top of him.
Hasn't the FBI been able to give you any relief with the torso investigation?
Ah, that's a good one, kid. Elliot Ness has saddled me with a junior AG man named Winslow, who doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. About all he's done is look pretty in his fancy suits for the photo boys and flapped his gums to the reporters about how he is gonna catch that killer.
This must be the one Finster looked through.
And now for the day's news. Our top story today comes straight from the tough and tumble neighborhood of Kingsbury Run. There, the police continue their exhaustive manhunt for the torso killer. As his head count hits 7, the citizens of Cleveland raise their voices in protest. Meanwhile, the city police have been baffled by this insidious madman's terrible work. The latest victim, discovered by 2 children playing along the banks of the Cuyahoga River, remains unidentified. Meanwhile, in news from around the world, our boys at sea captured an Axis ship in equatorial waters. The Axis vessel unsuccessfully attempted a nefarious ploy to bluff its way through the British blockade. Our sources indicate the Axis boat falsely flaunted our very own stars and stripes and had an American name painted on her pilot house and stern in an attempt to pass itself off as one of our own. Our American cruiser's good commander was too smart to fall for such a trick, however, and he immediately ordered the ship to heave to. Despite a last-ditch effort by the Axis merchantmen to blow up their own ship, their vessel was captured without incident. In other global news, snow and near-zero weather in Russia halted Nazi troops dead in their tracks. More bad news for the Axis as the British began an offensive in North Africa along the 130-mile Libya line. Score 1 for Hitler, though. Wire reports confirmed that the Australian cruiser Sydney was sunk by a German raider disguised as a Dutch merchant ship. I guess our mates down under could use a few lessons from our own boys at sea. In Washington today, Subaru Kurusu, Japan's new and super special envoy to the United States, is set to begin a round of talks with the State Department. These talks come right on the heels of Tojo's stinging remarks regarding Roosevelt's Pacific policy. With the Pacific crisis nearing its breaking point, officials in Washington hope that Kurusu, Japan's pinch hitter on the diplomatic diamond, can head off a military confrontation. Also in Washington, a recent survey of 59 Midwestern editors and publishers for the interventionist Continental Congress for Freedom displayed surprising opinions. The newspaper head honchos reported that their communities were now overwhelmingly in favor of the administration's foreign policy and a repeal of the Neutrality Act. Said one editor, "The so-called isolationist Midwest exists only in the minds of congressmen who have failed to keep abreast of a great surge of public opinion during recent months." In other national news, hopes ran high that John L. Lewis will call an end to the coal mine strike after 12 striking miners were shot during riots. New York has a new hero in Jerry the Super Dog. The lovable collie's barking awoke 16 families residing in apartments above an Upper East Side store. Our dog hero nearly gave his own life, however. After seeing everyone to safety, Jerry left the burning building and collapsed. Thanks to the efforts of a local doctor, Jerry was revived. Give that dog a biscuit. In local news, prominent Dayton entrepreneur Eiler G. Sundorf was killed in a plane crash. Meanwhile, here in our own beloved city, an estimated crowd of 6,000 gathered for the Freedom Day rally at Public Hall. The cheering crowd of freedom-conscious Clevelanders condemned Nazi hostage slayings and called for an end to defense strikes. Today's weather, one word, friends, brr. And finally, in sports today, the Barons extend their winning streak to 7 games by defeating the Washington Lions 3-0 in an American Hockey League game. And unconfirmed reports from Indians management indicate that they are about to sign a 24-year-old Indian shortstop, Smiling Lou Boudreau, to a 2-year contract to manage our hometown boys. If such a deal goes through, this would make Boudreau the youngest man to ever manage a big league club. We now return you to the magical melodies of Mel Fritz.
Excuse me, I'm looking for a man named George Hansen. He used to be...
I never heard of him.
Listen, buddy, I'm not trying to cause any trouble for you. I just need a little help trying to find a friend of mine.
Yeah, friend, huh? Look, I got nothing to do with no lousy feds. I want you to do me a favor and scram, huh? And while you're at it, take that friend over there with you. You're scaring away all my business.
What's your name?
Who wants to know?
My name's Jim Pearson. I'm from the COI.
Well, have a seat, Jimbo. The name's Winslow. Dick Winslow.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Winslow. What brings you here?
Oh, no need to be so formal. You can call me Dick. I'm just here for a drink.
Really? This just doesn't seem like your type of place.
Oh, and why not? Why can't a working Joe like me go out for a drink? Can't he try someplace new?
Well, you just seem a little overdressed, is all.
Guilty as charged, sport. Not a bad bit of deduction, that. Oh, well, I might as well confess. You're right. I'm with the FBI.
Really? What are you doing here?
Staking the place out. I thought I might get a lead on the torso killer, but I haven't had much luck yet. But you're new here, aren't you?
Yeah, I just started.
Oh, you don't say. And what brings you here to McGinty's, Jimbo?
Well, I'm working on an investigation of my own.
Oh, really? How interesting. Did someone steal some plans for a secret weapon? Huh? Or commit an act of sabotage, perhaps?
No, nothing like that. I'm looking into a group of possible German subversives.
Well, perhaps your men are on our little German blacklist. You mean they haven't told you about that? Your office should have a copy. Really, I'd complain to my superiors right away. How can a new agent hope to succeed without the necessary tools?
What is this list?
It's a list of suspicious Americans of German descent. FBI's been keeping tabs on them for a while now. Oh, it wouldn't take much for some of them to sell out Uncle Sam for, Uncle Adolf, huh?
Thanks for the information, Dick. This list might come in handy. Well, I should be going now.
Listen, sport. You're new here, so I'll give you one little bit of free advice. Some of the people in your department have stepped on some toes, so you be careful where you put your foot down.
I'll remember that.
It was a pleasure to meet you, Jimbo. Hey, drop by my office anytime.
Thanks, Dick. I just may take you up on that.
In other global news, snow and near-zero weather in Russia halted Nazi troops dead in their tracks. More bad news for the Axis as the British began an offensive in North Africa along the 130-mile Libya line. Score one for Hitler, though, Wire reports confirmed that the Australian crew...
Yes?
Sorry to bother you, sir.
Not at all, Mr. Pearson. Come right in.
Sir, is it true that the FBI's made a list of suspicious German Americans?
Who have you been talking to?
Special Agent Winslow, sir.
Oh, yes, Agent Winslow. It's true, we do have such a list. When France fell to the Germans, a lot of people felt that it must be due to the work of a fifth column of spies and traitors. Got the boys in Washington thinking that if we weren't careful, things might happen the same way here. And, well, Mr. Hoover and his FBI set to work, watching anyone they felt could betray their own countrymen. Naturally, important Americans of German descent were watched most closely.
Could I get a look at it, sir? I believe there might be a connection between some of the names on that list and the case that I'm investigating.
Just remember, son, it's possible that any of these men on that list are hard-working Americans, no different than you or I. Don't go off all half-cocked simply because Hoover's men put a name on a list.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Agent Jim Pearson with the COI. I was trying to reach a Professor Strauss.
Professor Strauss is not in. You're from Mr. Penske's office, aren't you?
Yes, sir, sort of. I wanted to...
Professor Strauss is away on business. I'll be sure to leave him a message.
Thanks. Sir?
When I arrived back at my office, there was another message from the museum. Whatever had been going on between Walter Pensky and Dr. Strauss seemed to be pretty important to both of them. Since I didn't have any more leads on my own investigation, and since Strauss's name did appear on the FBI's blacklist, along with Hank Finster's, I thought I might as well check into it.
Come in.
Excuse me, are you Miss Strauss?
I'm Helen Strauss.
Hi, how do you do? I'm Jim Pearson from the COI. I came across your name at work, and I was hoping, well, I was hoping you might be able to help me.
I'd love to. That is, if I can.
What is it exactly your father does, Helen?
Why? Didn't Mr. Pensky tell you?
I'm afraid I've never met Mr. Pensky.
But don't you... I'm afraid I don't understand. Didn't Mr. Pensky send you?
I've replaced Mr. Pensky. I found the message you left for him, and, well, I was hoping you might be able to tell me what he needed to see your father about.
He wanted my father to examine some artifacts he'd found on an investigation of his. As far as I know, they never did meet. My father was called away suddenly on business, and I didn't want to leave Mr. Pensky in the lurch. That's why I volunteered to help. If I could, of course.
What is it you do here, Helen?
Well, I'm just a graduate student intern here now, but one day I'm going to run this museum, or one just like it anyway. They've got such a wonderful display of Central European artifacts from the Middle Ages. Well, that's my area of study, Central European history, and I'm sorry. I'm sure you're not interested in listening to me babble. I could so just go on and on about my work.
Oh, that's okay, Professor.
My father's the professor.
And I just bet you're a chip off the old block. Do you suppose that these are the artifacts that Mr. Pensky wanted to speak to your father about?
Why, yes, I believe they are. Mr. Pensky told my father there were inscriptions on them. These are runes. Norse runes, I'm sure of it.
Norse runes?
Yes, Norse. The ancient Scandinavians, the Swedes, the Danes, the Germans. You probably know of them as Vikings. We still see many of their roots today. For example, Wednesday is a derivative of Woden's Day or Odin's Day. And then there's...
Whoa. Slow down, Professor. Are you trying to tell me that these runes are an ancient form of Germanic writing?
Yes, that's right. The runes are a sort of alphabet. Some people also use the symbols to represent words, like the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
These pieces look like they interlock somehow. Do you think you could help me figure out the order?
Sure, I'd love to.
What about these parchments here? They're the same runes, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Someone's already begun a translation of them. 9 gifts to Odin. That generally would have meant a sacrifice of some sort.
A sacrifice? What sort of sacrifice?
Well, usually a human sacrifice. The Vikings would choose 9 strong men and hang them. Sometimes they behead them. As often as not, it merely meant an animal sacrifice.
Go on.
Well, it's hard to tell. These sheets are just fragments. I'd need some time.
All right. I'll check back later then.
And now for the day's news. Our top story today comes straight from the tough and tumble neighborhood of Kingsbury Run. There, the
Excuse
police
me.
continue their exhaustive
I'm looking for a man named George Hansen. He used to be a foreman at the Finster Munitions factory. Do you know where I might be able to find him?
Who's asking?
I'm Jim Pearson from the COI. I was told he might be able to help me find...
Louis.
Louis?
This is about the creep that gave Finster that piece of paper, right?
That's right. So, you must be George.
Yeah, I'm George.
What can you tell me about this Louis? You have a last name?
I suppose so, don't everybody? I don't know what it is, though, mister.
Is Louis a friend of yours?
That rat, I didn't know him from Adam a few weeks ago.
How'd you meet him?
Me and some of the fellows was in here blowing our steam after payday last month. This guy Louis was in here. He starts talking, I start to feel kind of bad for him. He says he's a little down and out right now, but all he needs is some prospects and he'll be back up on his feet again. I tell him I got some pull down at the factory. Maybe I can get him in to see Mr. Finster. Maybe he can get a job.
You didn't ask him about a job, though, did he?
Nah. He gets in there and starts talking up that secret brotherhood crap. Next thing I know, Louis headed out the door and Finster's busting his gasket. I lost my job, I lost my house, and I lost my wife, and it's all on account of that Louis.
Do you have any idea where I might be able to find this Louis now?
Oh, buddy, don't I wish. If I could find him, I'd break his lousy neck.
Do you remember anything else about him? You said you were in here with your buddies. Would any of them remember anything?
I don't know. I'll ask around, see if I can help you out. Stop back later.
Thanks, George. You've been a big help.
In Washington today, Subaru Kurusu, Japan's new and super special envoy to the United States, is set to begin a round of talks with the State Department. These talks come right on the heels of Tojo's stinging remarks regarding Roosevelt's Pacific policy. With the Pacific crisis nearing its breaking point, officials in Washington hope that Kurusu, Japan's pinch hitter on the diplomatic diamond, can head off a military confrontation. Also,
come in.
What do you make of this?
I don't think I've ever heard of the Brotherhood of Thule before. I do seem to recall a group called the Thule Society, however. They were a secret society that became very popular with the German people after the Great War. Some people said they were a cabal of black magicians.
Black magicians? You don't really believe that, do you?
No. It's far more likely they met as an excuse to drink beer and talk about politics. They did have a great deal of influence on the German people, however. They were early proponents of German nationalism and Aryan superiority. And without the backing of the Thule Society, the Nazi Party probably would never have lasted.
Yeah, wouldn't that have been a shame? What do you make of those symbols?
These are runes, and that's their English translation beneath them. These crests are what really interests me, though. They're not the crests of traditional German aristocracy. Oh, wait a minute.
What is it, Helen?
I think I know where I've seen these before.
What are you looking for?
Aha! These are the crests of an ancient sect of Germanic knights. They posed as Christian soldiers. They still continue to worship the Old Norse gods and gave human sacrifices to them. Eventually, they were excommunicated by the Pope and forced into exile from Germany.
I don't get it. So, how is it you know so much about these pagan knights?
Well, I should know they're one of my father's pet projects. He's in the process of restoring a stained glass window with the crests of the officers of the sect even now.
And I don't get it. What do those knights have to do with this invitation?
Well, they're the same. The crests are the same.
So, whoever these people are, this Brotherhood of Thule, they're modeling themselves after an ancient sect of pagan knights? Here in Cleveland?
It sure seems that way.
Do you mind if I have a look at your father's project?
Sure, I don't see why not.
Do you mind if I examine it?
Well...
I won't do anything to get you in the hot water with your father. I'll be very careful, I promise.
Well, as long as you're careful, I guess it won't hurt anything.
Helen, could I see that book again?
Sure, Jim.
Thanks.